Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Getting the Most Bang for Your Pay-Per-Click Bucks. I'm Jill, and with me today is me, and we are part of the VR marketing team. Primarily, me is going to do the webinar today, and I'm going to be here adding my 2 cents, as I frequently do. Just a couple things before we get started. First of all, this webinar will be about 30-35 minutes long. At the end, there will be time for Q&A. So if you do think of questions along the way, go ahead and type those into the box that you see in your GoToWebinar window, and we'll be happy to answer as many of those questions as we can at the end of the webinar. One of the questions that we get at pretty much every webinar that we do, and if you've been to one of our webinars, you already know what this is, but the question we get is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, we are recording this. So at the next week, after the webinar is over, we will put this up on our help site where our recorded webinars are, and you'll be able to access any information that you might want to go over again. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to me and have him get started with the webinar.
Thanks, Jill, and hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar. So first off, we're going to start with our agenda for today's webinar. So first off, we're going to talk about setting your goals for a pay-per-click campaign, and then we're going to talk about how to build a keyword universe or a keyword list. Next, we'll talk about how to set up your paid search account. Then we'll go into how to write an effective ad for pay-per-click. And finally, we'll go into the bidding process and, of course, the tracking of your campaign. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with the definition, actually. So what is pay-per-click? Pay-per-click, also known as PPC, some people also call it search engine marketing or SEM, even though in some circumstances SEM is more the umbrella term for both pay-per-click and search engine optimization, which is also known as SEO. So what is pay-per-click? Well, here's the definition from Wikipedia, but to paraphrase a little bit, it's the form of online advertising that will allow you to promote your brand, your product, your service, your website within search engine result pages. So search engines such as Google, Yahoo, Bing, etc. And as its name indicates, unlike other forms of advertising where you pay for your number of impressions of places where you want it to be, here you only pay when somebody actually clicks on your ad. So that's a big difference. So here's a typical search engine result page. I picked Google here, I'm sorry. So on the top and the right-hand side, you can see pay-per-click ads. So those are what you pay for in order to get. So in this example, I typed vertical response as my search query. And so vertical response, thankfully, appears right on top. It's the first visible ad. And on the right, you can see all our competitors. And below that are what we call natural search results. So those are optimized thanks to search engine optimization, SEO. So today we're going to focus on pay-per-click though. So let's start off with setting your goals. So it may seem like a no-brainer, but as with any marketing campaign, it's very important to set objectives right before embarking on your PPC adventure. So whether you're trying to generate more traffic to your website, more sales, or generate more leads, you need to determine that right off the bat. Because without a clear purpose and understanding of the data that you'll be getting, it's going to be very easy to get caught up with PPC because, like I said, you will only pay once people click on your ad, so that makes it pretty cheap to begin with. But as time goes on, if you lose control of your PPC campaign, those small amounts of money will start stacking up in a hurry, and before you know it, you'll be digging yourself into a hole. So be really careful about that and set your objectives right off the bat. But the big advantage with PPC is that it is super flexible. You can pretty much make changes to your campaign on the fly, or even shut it down entirely if need be, if you need to take a step back and reevaluate how your campaign is doing. So it's pretty easy to adjust if the results don't really live up to your expectations. Now, building your keyword list or a keyword universe. So this is the step that will pretty much make or break your campaign. So really take the time to sit down and think through what should go onto your keyword list. Again, thanks to PPC's flexibility, you'll be able to change your keywords pretty much anytime. So any faux pas can be rectified. So here, pretty much the basics. Keywords can be divided into two categories between brand and non-brand. Non-brand also being known as category keywords. The brand keywords, they're those that are directly connected to a company. So it could be your company name, name of your product or services, any trademarks that you may have. So in the example you see on the slide, we took vertical response. So obviously vertical response would be a keyword for us. Roost would be a keyword, vertical response for AppExchange or for Salesforce, the VR Buzz, which is the name of our newsletter, the VR blog, and so on and so forth. For the category or non-brand keywords, these are the more generic terms that can be used to describe what you do. So they're also the ones that you and your competitors will be most likely be battling for. So for example, in our case, it would be terms like email marketing, social media, event management, direct mail, or surveys. So the types of products that we offer or services, but as you saw on the couple slides before, it's now also fair game to compete for brand keywords. So as you saw when we typed in vertical response, we saw a list of our competitors show up there, which means that they're also bidding on our brand keywords. So keep that in mind. So for PPC though, I've been using the word keyword for the last few minutes, but it's really a misnomer because you want to be able to list entire phrases that match as closely as possible to whatever users will be typing their search queries. So for example, if you're a small business and you don't know what would be the best email marketing tool that most suited to you, you might just go in Google or Yahoo and just type in best email marketing tool for small businesses. So that's a whole phrase. And same thing, if you're looking for a social media management tool, you could go and see top 3 social media management software. So I know it sounds like the possibilities are endless because searchers can be really creative in what they type. But really don't be afraid because neither you or your competitors are going to be able to cover all the keywords or key phrases out there. So yeah, don't be afraid. Also, keep in mind of all the different typos that people are going to make when they type in their query. So make sure to add them as well into your bucket of keywords. So for example, again, in our case, a lot of people tend to type vertical space response instead of all attached. Or they might just make a quick typo and typing email marketing instead of marketing. So try to keep those in mind as well. Now, once you have your keywords, let's go into the different matching options. So this will happen once you actually set up your PPC account, but I want to bring it up here. These actually work in whatever PPC tool that you'll be using, which I'll describe in further detail in the next few slides. But I wanted to talk about these. So first off, you have the exact match. As the name suggests, it will only display your ad if the exact keyword that is entered in the search field. So for example, if one of your keywords is linked to a certain ad and people only type that certain keyword, for example, vertical response, that will trigger the ad. If there's a word before it, if there's a typo in it, it won't show up. So in order to type in an exact match, just put brackets around it, like you see on the slide. For phrase match, these ads will appear as long as the query contains the keywords in the order in which you listed them. So for an example, an ad will be shown if the user types in what is the best email marketing software and your key phrase was, your phrase match keyword, I'm sorry, was email marketing. And to mark this keyword as a phrase match type, just add quotation marks around it. The third one we have is broad match. These ads will only be triggered if the search engine deems the search query relevant. So I know it sounds kind of random. The thing is, using the broad match keywords, it will generate a lot of traffic, but you'll pretty much lose control over what's going to show up. And the leads generated won't necessarily be qualified, even though search engines, as the algorithms get better, they're getting better as well at identifying rubbish. So keywords, in order to add keywords at search match, you don't need to add anything around them. And finally, the last one is negative match. So we were talking about how broad match will basically give free reign to the search engine to give whatever it wants to you. Negative will bring back some degree of control. So for example, if you're in cloud computing, you can use negative keywords such as weather channel or rain or sun from your search results, so ads won't show up, for your company when people are just looking for today's weather. Negative keywords just need to be preceded by a minus or dash sign, like you see on the screen.
And as me said, these are standard setups, so it doesn't really matter what program you're using for your PPC. You're going to still use these same type of phrases or entry. So
The
you're going to
symbols,
have
yeah.
the symbols, the quotation marks, and the brackets. So this works across whatever platform you're using.
And so, nice segue, Jill. Speaking of platforms, here are the different providers that you can choose from when starting a PPC campaign. You probably want to start off, as you can see, you can probably want to start off with one of the big three, so Google, Yahoo, or Bing, which each offer their own solutions. So Google has Google AdWords, Bing is Microsoft Ad Center, and Yahoo has Yahoo Network Plus. So you can go with either just one, start with, or you can go with all three or all five of them. But keep in mind, though, that all these networks are going to use different algorithms, even though since a couple of years now, Yahoo is now using Bing. So if you're using one strategy for Google, for example, that works really well, it might not work for Bing. So please do keep that in mind. As you can see here, these are actually the ComScore February search market share numbers that were from this year actually. Bing is continuing to gain some market share, while Yahoo is steadily decreasing. And there's talk about basically Yahoo search at least collapsing to Bing in the near future, and Google is still growing. So. Take your pick, bud. All right. So setting up your PPC account. So let's say now you have your huge list of keywords. You've determined if you wanted to use phrase, exact, broad, or negative on each of them. So now you can go in either Google AdWords or Microsoft Ad Center, Yahoo Network Plus, and create your account. So first off, you'll be asked to divide your keywords into either campaigns or ad groups. So here's actually how the account is structured. You'll first be asked to add a campaign. And so what I would recommend for you is to stick to one campaign per goal that you set. So let's take an example of a winery. You probably know, if you've been following our webinars, we're big wine fans here. So don't be surprised by my example. So if you're a winery, and you sell different products. So, for example, red wine, white wine, rosé. I would recommend sticking to one campaign for products. So you would create one campaign for red wine, one campaign for white wine, and one campaign for rosé. Then, within your campaign, you'll have different ad groups, and within each of these ad groups, I would recommend is to organize them by either common theme or product or service. Ideally, 3 ad groups per campaign. So as you can see, within each ad group, that's where you drop the buckets that correspond. So let me dig a little deeper into my wine example, just to make it a little more concrete. So let's say your campaign is red wine. And you have 3 different products within red wine. You have Syrah, you have Merlot, and you have Pinot Noir. So to each of these ad groups, you're going to attach the keywords that correspond to each of them. So for example, for Syrah, well, obviously you want to use the word Syrah because that's the name of your product. But then you're going to use Shiraz, which is a variant of Syrah. You can add Dureza, which is the name of the grape, and also maybe a category brand term such as dry red wine because Syrah is usually dry. And same thing for Merlot. For Merlot, you can add Bordeaux because that's where the grape is grown. You can add, well, obviously the name of the wine and also the fact that it's a fruity red wine. And finally, Pinot Noir. So the name, Pinot Noir, name of the grape, black grape, and light red wine. And again, you can add key brand terms and remove any negative keywords.
So from our slide earlier where we had brand and category keywords, these would basically be category keywords, and then you would actually put in brands that go in there. So if you have a name for your Syrah or for your winery, you would also include that in these buckets. Is that right?
Definitely, exactly. So yeah, that's our example in wine. So the other settings. So once you set up your campaign, your ad group, that's basically the bulk of your PPC account. Now let's dig in a little deeper. First off, you have networks, devices, and extensions. So these settings will allow you to keep a close eye on your budget and where your ads will be served. So regarding the networks, you have two options. My suggestion would go between either just having one campaign run on one network. So the two networks are either content or search, but don't have one campaign running on both. Delivery. So here's where you have the option of either letting the search engine do the work for you just based on click-through rate, which is called the optimize option. Basically, that means as long as people keep clicking on that ad, the search engine will keep on serving it. Or you can run the split testing yourself, which is based on the metrics that best suit your goals, which is rotate. So that's a little more manual process, but if you have a good grasp on what what your goals are, which I hope you do, and all the segmentations that you're running, I would advise running with rotate, since it's less random and you have more control over it. Then we have scheduling. So basically, this is your on-off switch. Remember when I said that PPC was so flexible that you can even shut it down if need be? Well, this is the button. This will allow you to run and pause your campaign as you please. There's actually a little more granularity than just on and off because you can also adjust the amount of your keyword bids. So when I mean keyword bids, I'll go into it further in our bidding section, is for each keyword you can place a certain amount of money in order to have it as high as possible within your search rankings. So this way you can this is where you can adjust if you want to place more money on a certain keyword. And so depending on if there are any opportunities, for example, if there's a market mood swing that feels like, oh, people are using that keyword a little more than usual, or depending on seasonality, or if you're running an advertising or promotion campaign, this way you can actually play a little more with your bidding. And finally, last but not least, you need to choose who is going to see your ads. So you can, within this audience, you can choose geography, so country, city, or even define certain specific areas. So, for example, if you're a winery based in Sonoma, and you want to sell your wine to people within the Bay Area, but you don't want to go compete with the people in Napa or the people in South Bay, you can just fix a 30-mile radius around San Francisco, but exclude the 10-mile radius around Napa or around South Bay. So that's an example. You can also, based on language, obviously, if you have different ads in different languages, you can run the French ones in France or English, Mandarin ones in China, or etc. So now that you're done with your settings, it's time to set up to write an ad that will have people actually click on it. So here's this is my older example with the vertical response, the top ad that showed up. And as you can see, there are different components to this ad. So first off, you have the ad title. So the ad title is 25 characters maximum. Please make sure to include keywords in your headline because, so let's say you're looking for vertical response or you're looking for templates. Make sure to include those keywords within the ad title because that's the first thing that people are going to look at. if they typed in email templates and they don't see it within the ad title, they're not going to click on it because they're going to think it's not relevant to them. Next, you have the description. Sorry. Oops. Description. Here you only have one line, but you get to actually use 2 lines when you write an ad description. And each line can be 35 characters maximum. So what you want to do is relate what you say in this paragraph to whatever the landing page that you'll be directing people to in order to stay consistent. Just make sure to get straight to the point, deliver the most relevant information about your business, your product or services, depending on the search query, of course, and always, always include a strong and enticing call to action. So in our case, if you click on this ad, that means we'll give you 100 free email credit, and so you can try it for free. The display URL, which is, as you can see, between the ad title and the description. So it's 35 characters maximum, and as the name indicates, this is the visible web address that will show below the description. Above the description. So you can either type in your homepage or whatever relevant product service page that is most relevant to the search query. Just make sure it's short enough and clean. And besides, we all know all your URLs are clean anyways, right? And finally, as you can see, the little destination URL that I put under the ad, that's actually something that's not going to be visible to users. It's 1,024 characters maximum, and that's where the ad is actually linking to. So you may have a display URL that's clean, but the destination doesn't need to be identical, because you can have it point to an entirely different landing page that you have created for the purpose of your PPC campaign. And that way it can be a little less clean, and it can be tagged with any referred by codes that you may have assigned to this particular campaign. Now, bidding. So as the name indicates, bidding in PPC is pretty much like bidding in an auction, or pretty much gambling. You are going to place a certain amount of money on certain keywords that in turn have certain ads attached to them, and in function of how much money you put, the higher your chance of ranking are. So each advertiser can set a monthly budget and also a maximum cost per click by keyword. So we've seen budgets really ranging either from $50 a month all the way to $500,000 a month, and even more. Yeah, that's you better be confident in your PPC to run things like that. Just a few benchmarks for you. Some numbers that I found from 2011. The average cost per click was $1.04, and the conversion rate was 5.3%. And the cost per acquisition was $19.74. So, and also I want to point out this metric, which is the invalid click rate. It's pretty remarkable because it was 10.9% last year in 2011. So that means either people are trying to defraud advertisers by running scam sites, or maybe just Google has gotten better at detecting any illegal activity going on. So there you go. Getting rid of spam, all good. And the rise in cost per conversion, like I said, 19.74, might be a result of change in business mix, so improved ad positions or rise in competition. So as more and more businesses, such as yourself, I hope, discover the benefits of PPC advertising, it's really become necessary for advertisers to, really squeeze the most juice they can out of every click. So there you go. So enough with the numbers. More strategy. So let's choose your weapon for bidding. So you have three options. First is manually bidding. So like I said, you yourself go in and based on your metrics, on your conversion rate and your goals that you set, go ahead and choose which keyword, or how much money, which keywords you want to focus on. The conversion optimizer is basically a half and half between you controlling the bidding and you letting the search engine do it. And finally, budget optimizer is all search engine. Basically, with whatever budget you give to the search engine, it's going to run with it. At first, it may seem a little random, a little risky, but if you're not too well versed in PPC at first, you can try it. And based on the results from that, you'll be able to kind of adjust and maybe move on to conversion optimizer, because the conversion optimizer uses historical data on top of what you do to place ads. A couple extra tips is that winners don't necessarily finish first. What I mean by that is a lot of advertisers make the mistake of always going for the #1 spot because they think that's the most visible and is going to draw the most clicks. Well, the thing with PPC is, in order to get that spot, that means you'll have to put more money on it. But as you see on the search engine results, #2 and #3 spots are not bad either because they're pretty visible as well. And also, that means they're way more profitable because that's less cost per click. And again, I know I've been telling you this a lot, it's all about tweaking. Again, take advantage of the fact that PPC is so flexible. You can literally make changes on the fly. It's not like when people used to run print advertising, and so once your ad was out there and if by mistake there was a typo or there was something that was offensive, they couldn't pull it back because it was already out there on hundreds of thousands of magazines or newspapers. So here in our case, if you see that one ad is not performing as well as you hoped, or is not generating the revenue that you were hoping, if revenue was your goal, you can basically go ahead, change some copy, run some tests, or just pull it all together and try to find a new strategy. Tracking. More numbers. So here are some of the key metrics to track in order to have a successful PPC campaign. So first off, impressions. So just like any advertising, this is the number of times that your ad has been served to users. And then you have the click-through rate. So same as with email, it's the number of times, your ad has actually clicked on divided by the number of impressions above. Next comes bounce rate. And that's the number of visitors viewing one page only. So they've gone to your landing page, but divided by the total number of page entries. So that will measure how effective your landing page that's attached to your ad is. The conversion rate. So these are the number of goal achievements divided by the number of visits. So again, you define your conversion rate depending on the goal you set earlier, whether it be just traffic generation or lead generation, somebody who filled out an information form, or somebody who actually completes a purchase, and so on and so forth. The cost per click. The cost per click is what you earn every time a user clicks on your ad. So like I said, PPC, the way it works is you only pay when somebody clicks on your ad, and so that's what cost per click measures. And finally, the quality score. So this is the other, aside from bidding, this is the other major factor in deciding where your ad appears in the rankings. It's basically the search engine's way of rewarding the relevance of your ad. And so what I mean by that is, going back to writing an ad, is you want to make sure it is as relevant as possible to the search query. So they're going to calculate this quality score based on click-through rate, ad content, like I said, and the quality of landing page that the ad leads to. So the formula for the quality score that most Google, for example, uses is the maximum bid multiplied by the quality score, which will give you your ad rank. More into the metrics. This is not a metric per se. I wanted to talk about the head versus Longtail. So they might not be, like I said, not maybe metrics per se, but they're pretty crucial to keep track of. What do I call head? Well, head is the few keywords that account for most of your visits. So basically, when you look at your list of keywords, you see the number of clicks that they have, or number of traffic that it's generating. You see that there's a small group that really has really high number of clicks compared to the rest. So that's what the head is called. The long tail is the one, are the keywords that individually they don't account, they account for little traffic, but collectively, if you add them all, they could account for a huge amount of traffic. So as you can see on the graph here, keywords in the x-axis, sorry,
Or as some might say, along the bottom.
along the bottom, thank you.
In a less mathy term.
Sorry.
Math is not my friend.
And so the number of visits on the vertical axis, you can see head and long tail. So when you take a closer look at these keywords that compose the head and long tail, you'll see that oftentimes brand keywords are included in the head, while the category or non-brand keywords are part of the long tail. So what my recommendation would be is for you to focus all your PPC efforts on the long tail and leave your head to the search engine optimization, which is SEO. So why would you do that? Well, because category terms are typically used in queries by people who don't know about you. So they're unfamiliar with your company, they're unfamiliar with what you sell or what you offer. So that way, when using PPC to focus on those keywords, you'll be able to capture brand new prospects and introduce yourself to them early in the sales cycle. So for example, you're a small business looking for email marketing, but you've never heard of vertical response. You're going to go in and type best email marketing for small business. I know I used this example earlier, but since the person has never heard of vertical response, he's going to see the ad. I'm like, maybe this is one of the top companies. I should check them out, and they'll keep that in mind. Whereas your head keywords, so your brand terms, you're going to use them to optimize your website. So people, when they actually type in vertical response, your links will show up in the natural results, which are part of the main page of the search engine results. So that way, it suddenly becomes easier as you only have a few keywords left to concentrate on within your long tail, within your SEO, I mean. And so you won't have to pay as much for people who already know you. Win-win.
Yeah, I found this slide really interesting the first time we took a look at this, how to break up your words. And this is a great thing that you can take away from doing your PPC campaigns, is you can find these words that fall into the head portion of this graph and start using those for your SEO, as Mee was just saying. But I found this to be a very interesting and helpful slide. Hopefully everyone else did. Not that I do SEO for our company, but I still found it really interesting.
So let's wrap it up. Again, just to make sure I hammer this point home. Pay-per-click is the most flexible and cost-effective marketing strategy that's available for you today. Again, there's not only do you pay only when it is successful, which means when people click on your ad, but it's also totally flexible. You can make changes literally on the fly. My second point would be to prepare a lot. As you can see, most of the work that I've described during this webinar was actually done on the back end. So between setting your goals, down to setting up your keyword list, to setting up your PPC account, to writing your ads. Once all that is done, the execution will come by itself. Basically, once the ads are out there, you're just going to be collecting. And after that, it's up to you to keep track of these results. That's my third point. Keep an eye on your key performance indicators, KPIs. So again, depending on the goals that you set, if it's traffic, it's revenue, it's leads, keep an eye on those, as well as PPC metrics such as click-through, impressions, etc. And also, finally, as we just mentioned, the head and the long tail in order to really optimize your PPC bucks. So with that, moving on to, here's some resources for you. in case you wanted to learn more. There's the VR blog. I believe there are a couple posts on there that will
I believe there's a couple posts that you wrote on there.
Actually, there's one I wrote, and there's also one that goes into detail on how to use Google AdWords. I think that's what Janine wrote. Our CEO, Janine, wrote a couple of years back. A few guides into getting started. On our vertical response website.
And our guides are free, so you should go check those out.
Mm-hmm. And also, you can check out if you choose to go with Google AdWords at first or Microsoft Ad Center. They have really detailed guides on how to basically get started with their accounts. And the last one is one of my favorite blogs, actually. It's written by a fellow named Avinash Kaushik, and he's pretty much metrics guru in terms of web analytics. So you can find more details on head versus Longtail on his blog, or even how to track a PPC campaign and all other sorts of really web-related analytics.